And now back to the action with round number 2.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Combat Sports Live. We're talking UFC 113. Stick around because we're going to be talking with Matt Mitrione, the man that gave Kimbo Slice's walking papers. Will be giving us a play-by-play on what went right for him that night and what's ahead for him in the future. We will also be talking with Caleb McAllister, Lynchburg's own, from Team Ram, making his professional mixed martial arts debut at a fantastic show in Fairfax, Virginia called the Ultimate Warrior Challenge, the UWC. If you want to check that show out, it's UWCMMA.com. And we were just talking about Paul Daly and Josh Koscheck. Just a recap of UFC 113 a week ago today. It's such a fantastic card. I mean, I guess in today's mixed martial arts a week is like a year. That was probably my favorite fight card from the last 18 months.
I agree with you, Jeremy, and it's kind of weird how it ended because it seemed like Dana White almost had to turn out to be the principal rather than the promoter. He sent Kimbo home, which needed to happen. But, then we have the Paul Daly incident, which after the fight, I guess in frustration from the ghost knee from Koscheck and probably some of the talking from laying on top of him for 3 rounds. He punches him after the fight, after the bell, after the separation. That's wrong. That's the only time I've ever seen that happen. In my years of watching and being around the sport. Jeremy, what do you think?
I think that is one of probably the toughest things that you got to do, and you got to respect. Hear a lot of people talking about Dana White and how much he's this or he's that. They love him, they hate him, but you got to respect the guy for the job that he has to do. I mean, think back 4 weeks ago at UFC 112 when he has to go out to a market that he's never been to before and explain the Anderson Silva performance to the public and apologize. And then you roll right into UFC 113 and
he's explaining himself again.
Right, he's going and start to feel like, man, I mean, a big part of his job is just being a janitor. Got a guy that has to come in and say, I'm sorry they didn't perform. Or,
be nice, boys, be nice, or boys, step up and fight. It is a fight. What's a shame. When you look at this in the end, is Paul Daly had, and probably still has, a very promising career.
Yes.
He's got to retool some things and work on the ground, but what he did and now being expelled from the UFC is going to be a huge window of time for either him to get back or resurrect a career that I thought was going to be pretty phenomenal myself. And you hate it, but Dana had to do it. Do I think the penalty was a little too harsh? I think so. I think you fine the guy. I think you keep his purse. I think he's a very talented fighter that's going to land somewhere else, which is going to cause the UFC problems, I think, down the road because he's going to be a draw now with what happened.
Speaking of which, wasn't 48 hours after the ink on the walking papers was signed that Daly signed a fight to fight in Australia.
He's a great fighter, you know. I think the guy's going to have a great future. And if you're going to suspend Daly or expel Daly, what should you do to Koscheck for the fake knee that wasted and embarrassed the UFC? He didn't realize it until after he saw it on the Jumbotron that everybody knew before he did that the knee didn't hit him.
That's a tough thing to call, but I think that at the end of the day, Dana has to. You're coming off the heels of the Strikeforce CBS incident where Mayhem Miller jumps into the cage. Then a riot breaks out with the Diaz brothers and all the guys from Gracie Barra. Got just a melee on CBS television. And then you're on pay-per-view. You got Daly running up and hitting Koscheck after the bell.
Well, certainly I think the UFC will make the adjustment. They'll pay more attention to when the final bell sounds. You haven't seen that. The guys are normally either exhausted or have gained enough respect for the other guy during the fight that doesn't happen. I think that Paul Daly's frustration stemmed from Koscheck's two things. The knee didn't happen. They got that right, though. The point that was deducted got given back.
Right.
And by the end of the fight, he probably was just frustrated, unprofessional on the fact that Koscheck laid on him for nearly 15 minutes and just smothered him. At the end of the evening, it was wrong. He said it in the ring, I'm sorry, but it was too little too late. He's gone somewhere else, and hopefully he'll fight back to come to the UFC another day.
And I think that Dana White makes those kind of decisions. He's trying to squelch possible problems. He doesn't want this to happen in the UFC. He wants to make an example. But I think that what ends up happening is that he goes so far that he creates problems for himself because now the guy's a free agent. Now the guy is still ranked number 5 in the world in the 170-pound class. And he's going to go to a Dream or he's going to go to a Strikeforce. It creates more problems for the organization to stay at the top of the mountain of MMA.
Well, there's one thing for certain. Dana did send a message. I guarantee you it's been well received. And as much as I think Paul Daly is an up-and-coming fighter, the UFC is bigger than Daly and will be fine.
Sure.
The message will be received. You won't see that happen for a long long time.
I agree. We've got a lot of great fights coming up tonight. Strikeforce on Showtime. An interesting card there. Just want to touch on that really quickly. You've got Alistair Overeem fighting Brett Jackson, the heavyweight championship of Strikeforce. What I would call a strange matchup. Brett Jackson is fighting for a title, but he's coming off of a loss to Fedor Emelianenko. It kind of makes you wonder when you've got a matchup like that, what's going on within the organization. What it tells me is that Strikeforce is still developing because it's more of a promotion and less of a sports league, because you've got a guy that's lost fighting for the title. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, he lost to what everybody seems to think is the best fighter in the world. I don't agree with that, but they seem to think he is. The best thing for Strikeforce this weekend, I don't know about you, Jeremy, is it's the only show in town.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's been so much going on the past 30 days. I hate to see my pay-per-view bill, but the last 30 days that this is something that people actually can focus on, and they'll get to know what Strikeforce is and which some of these lesser-known fighters are, and that's going to be exciting. Still in the UFC 113, I want to go back real quick. The Marcus Davis win. You know, that one I held very close to my heart because, you know, Marcus has come to town and been so good to us. Jeremy, what'd you think?
It was a fantastic matchup between the two. The guys were so well matched, you know, an explosive fight all the way around. What really struck me was how different Marcus looked physically and how different his game looked. I mean, when he came in, and he looked the same to me because, you know, he's doing his walkout, but when they actually panned back, he looked like a different guy. He looked like a different fighter. And I think, you know, what he touched on last week with his interview with us, where he said, you know, I haven't been weightlifting. I'm not muscle bound. I'm not doing the weight cut. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. You know, you kind of gloss over it. Then you see the results of that.
When you make it a striking contest like he did in the second round, it shows you speed kills. And that's what Marcus went back to. You know, in the beginning, in between the first and second round, you know, sitting on the stool, he was given specific instructions that he went out and followed, and he knocked the guy out with the fast, heavy hands. And at the end of the day, you know, the nice thing about that, for all you young fighters out there, you know, I've got an 11-year-old that we're trying to train. Watch what Marcus did. Watch the instructions he followed. He went out and accomplished the mission because he listened. Put the work in, and he listened.
And that's one thing you got to respect about Marcus. He's experimented with so much. You know, you look at this guy's career coming from a long career in professional boxing. Then he makes the adjustment, goes to mixed martial arts, has no lick of ground game, goes back, puts together a ground game, starts to blow up and lift weights and become this guy that makes a cut. Then he finds out that really can work against him, so he makes the adjustment there.
I'm really excited to see the next phase, because this was the first piece of it. Marcus is going to be around for a while now.
He killed him.
Yeah, that's exciting. I look forward to seeing a lot more of his fights.
Me too, and I'm sure that we'll be having him back on the show. We know Marcus Davis is a great friend to Combat Sports Live, and we're always going to support him. Stick around, ladies and gentlemen. Next round, we're going to be talking with Matt Mitrione, calling in from his gym. We're going to be talking with him about his decisive win over Kimbo Slice, what this means for his career, and what he's got coming up on the horizon. So stick around. We'll be back in just a few.